Hello, everyone. We're going to go over Sucheng's and Your Short Besides today, and this is one of my favorite articles to read, and I actually use it for pretty much all my classes, my anthropology classes, my globalization classes, and definitely my ethnic study classes, particularly Asian American. But her issue is not just Asian; it's actually global. It's actually it's a wonderful piece to show about how people experience and interact with disabled people. But before we start that, I'm going to do a little kind of warm up, and this is our first lecture for this one. And so I'm gonna show a little bit about Chinese talk.
It's funny. I look over at the kid. He's just like, I don't know what's happening anymore. I don't even have balls yet. I don't know how. I hope it wasn't a shot of the kid's nuts. That'd be awkward, wouldn't it? I don't like a lot of sports, I'll be honest with him. I hate soccer. No. What do you boo because I have an opinion? Boo your opinion. Get out of America. We don't like your thoughts. I hate soccer. Fuck soccer. And fuck you for liking it. Let me tell you why I don't like soccer. Because they have this World Cup. Let me tell you something about the World Cup. It's not the fucking World Cup. You know why? Because the two countries that represent me are never in the World Cup. Canada and India are never in the World Cup. Canada, for obvious reasons. It's a world event. We don't get involved in world events, you know? We look at the U.S. Are you guys going? Yeah? Oh, no, go ahead. That's great. Yeah, go ahead. Sure, that's perfect. Yeah. No, we'll stay back. We'll tidy up. Talk about it. Let's go. It always bothers me that India is never in the World Cup. We're the second largest population in the world. There's 1.2 billion people over there. We can't come up with 11 fucking guys to make a team? You know what the problem is? You have no idea how hard it is to kick a ball straight with curly-toed shoes on. We're standing in the middle field. I'm open! Where the hell is the ball going? It always freaks me out that the Chinese are never in the World Cup. You're the largest population in the world. And you're known for kicking. But it's kicking. You know, I want to see the Chinese team in the World Cup. I want to see the Chinese team when they get into their huddle. That's what I really want to see. You know? You see all the other countries when they get in their huddle? All right, guys, we're going to get out there. We're going to pass that ball around. We're going to have a good time. All right? Go team. You see the Chinese team? Okay. Hey, asshole, listen up. When you see the ball coming, then you go down the field. Chase the Quilo with the ball. Something's going down. Be a man.
To Chinese talk. All right, so Sucheng, and I'm going to put it here on full, so you probably won't see me now, but so Sucheng is a great person in many ways. She's written 17 books, co-authored or co-edited 17 books. She was an assistant professor at and made tenure at Cal State Berkeley. She later was an associate professor and chair, associate professor and provost at University of California, Santa Cruz. And so these are a few of her books that she's written. Actually not 17, actually not 13. She's already written more from this last, I used to lecture this. She's actually written more, 17 books, okay? And I want you to ask yourself, do you think you could do that? Do you think you could write 17 books, right? That's pretty amazing and difficult. I think he's like 18 now. Actually, I recently put out a book chapter. It took me, I don't know, like 4 years or something. So crazy times, very difficult to write and to put out this much work. And actually, the lectures are actually, the books are actually university presses. So those are the highest level of intellectual accomplishment that you can do as a human can do, right? And I want to talk a little bit about her really, really famous story and your short besides. So in this story, she talks about how she was raised, and she talks about, so who's talking about in this story? So right now, take a sheet of paper out, and write down all 4 questions, and that might be on your quiz, okay? Who is talking in the story? What illness does she have? How was she raised, and what class was she of, okay? Well, she talks about how she was born in Shanghai, and she was educated, actually she's from a privileged family, and she was educated in Hong Kong and later Malaysia, and she kind of has this really great story about how she's treated in different cultures. And the rub is because she has polio, right? When she was 4 years old, she contracted polio. And because of that, if you don't know what polio is, sometimes it stunts the growth of one foot, and you sort of have a limp. You generally need crutches or a wheelchair. And sometimes actually there's some sort of curvature of your back. So she has polio, and you know, her father's distraught. Her father's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. So throughout her life, her father just apologizes to her and says, I'm so sorry, I was a bad person in the past, and you know, all this karma has gone to you, and it's because of me. So she, at a very young age, actually taught herself how to walk, but also her father, in terms of culture, she saw her very loving father apologize to her, right? And some people blamed because she was named, her name means the wisdom of the gods. They took her to a fortune teller, and they thought, well, maybe, you know, your name is too highfalutin for a woman, right? So let's change your name, etc. Or let's not offend the gods. So the big scene that she paints in this article is she taught herself to walk. She has crutches, and she walked up to the stage, and while she's playing piano in Malaysia, and someone screams out, "Cripple!" Like actually screams out from the audience, and you know, she's distraught. She's you know, I'm sure crying internally, if not externally, and she just continues to play. She furiously plays the piano, and she finishes the piece. And so I think that's a great example of the actual kind of a good speaking point to who Susan Chan is that she has a lot of difficulty. People make fun of her, but still. She keeps going, she perseveres, and she finishes her piece. So this happens throughout her life, right? She goes to Swarthmore, which is a liberal arts elite college. She gets her master's at University of Hawaii, and she gets her PhD at Berkeley. And so, and even in those instances, she's just very iconic and very different, because even for her age and for that generation, as she is a great woman in a great era, and she's still alive. She's an international student, she's a woman, she's Asian, and she has polio, she's handicapped. Well, she talks about how, you know, there's lots of barriers, how in America, people actually view her with, sometimes they ignore her. So in Americans, they sometimes, if they see someone disabled, they'll actually ignore them. And there's a scene that she paints in her article where a young child wants to talk to her and ask her something, but the mother, the American mother, is so ashamed that shoos her away and tells her not to look, right? So in the Asian context, sometimes people ask you, like, what's wrong with you, right? And then sometimes they'll try to convert you to that religion. So, you know, maybe your karma, you're morally flawed, so it'll change your karma, right? In America, she says that it's not good for how handicapped are treated, is that they'll look away, they'll ignore you to the point where you're not there at all, you're invisible, right? So she relates this. It's really interesting how she talks about how 2 different cultures look at disability, right? She also relates how, and I love this quote, she says, how I think of myself is very different than how people think of me, right? Because when people see her, they see her, you know, sometimes in a wheelchair, and they have this belief system about her. But, you know, I never knew she had a wheelchair. I just knew that she's this crazy a woman that wrote 17 books, as a pillar of definitely Asian American studies, but also history. She's just a great historian, self-taught, even though her PhD is in political science. And so she talks about how when she was getting married, her husband's family really objected. her future mother-in-law said, "Oh no, what if she can't have kids? That's not good." And her father-in-law also objected to their marriage because he said, "Son, you've dated all these good-looking girls in the past. Why are you dating this disabled woman?" Right? So they have like these also objections. And the biggest one she objected with, and kind of harking back to the quote I just said, is she had a professor who actually said that her dissertation was the best dissertation he's ever read in 15 years. It was the best. And he said, "You know what? You have these differently able issues, handicapped, if you will, and you know what? Maybe research would be good." And she has won many teaching awards, and she bumped into her professor 20 years later, where she's winning another teaching award. She's had so many accolades. Her books are just world famous at this point. And she said, "Do you remember that you said, I'll actually be a research," right? So she also argues that some people are very parentalistic, and maybe they have good feelings towards disabled, but really it can sometimes limit disabled. So she does have these recommendations, right? How do you interact with someone disabled? Well, you can ask them questions, and she says that she really likes how Asian people, again, not in a rude manner, ask, "What's wrong with you? Why did you get this?" And that's actually to have information. So a lot of times I have a lot of American students, and they'll say something like, "Well, that's so rude. I would never ask why someone's disabled." Well, I have to say that that's your culture, right? That's your cultural background. But think of it in different contexts. Let's say you're in Asia. You see someone who obviously is differently abled. If you walk away from that person, you lose all that knowledge. Like, for instance, what is afflicting them, how to interact with them, how you can help them, right? So in Asia, you would ask them, "What's wrong with you? Do you need help? What can I do?" And you learn. So if you walk past that person and you ignore them because you are socially conditioned in America to ignore them, you lose a lot of information, right? So it's not in any way a rude thing. So I really want to stop. A lot of students will read it and they'll read it incorrectly, this article, and say, "Oh, Asians are rude." It's not the case. It's actually they want to get information. Now, she says that when you see someone who's disabled, you should ask if they need help. And if they say they don't need help, don't give them help. But if they say they do need help, give them help, right? So I think that's a pretty good, very good suggestions how we should interact with disabled, right? And I want to argue something about Sucheng. Yes, because she was so wonderful and she had all these teaching awards and she had a limp and she forced herself to walk, right? Because she wanted to be independent. She actually had polio issues. What happened was actually and again, I'm not going to say tragically because her life is not tragic in any way, other than her affliction that she really fought against. She actually wanted to be independent, so she walked with a crutch because she didn't want to have a wheelchair. And what happened is she had to get these really, really expensive massages because it was just a lot of pain that she had to endure because of that, right? And when she had to walk with her crutch, it actually twisted her skull, her spine again, where eventually actually it did force her back into the wheelchair. But again, she still continued to write and teach and lecture. So I want to make an argument about Sucheng, and this is my argument, that although she had maybe mobility issues, particularly with her legs, I like to make an argument that she actually metaphorically is a pillar. She took her kind of quote-unquote disability or differently abled handicap, and she metaphorically became a pillar. She became a leg to Asian American studies and a leg to history, right? In the studies of the history, it was self-taught. So that is my argument that she created her whole entire life as a pillar, as a leg to certain subjects. And she is definitely a founding mother of Asian American studies. If it wasn't for her, we really wouldn't have all the rich data that we have now in Asian American studies. So that is my argument, and I want you to think about it, and you can write in your blogs. How does your culture interact or think of differently able? Do you hide them? Do you help them? How do you think about that? So now we'll have a break, and that will be your blog assignment. It will be how does your culture and how do other cultures feel about disabled? And again, Sucheng, many people don't know she's disabled, right? But they just see her 18 books, okay? So thank you very much, and I'll see you in a few minutes.